Hello and welcome to the Shack News Chattycast, the podcast that always tries a first draft on graph paper. I'm Steve Watts.
And I'm Brian Carr. Steve, today's Chattycast is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at www.audibletrial.com/chattycast. That's CHATTYCAST.
Oh, you did it. Are you working on that every week now?
I was working on that all week.
Impressive.
And that was the result.
Who's the show? That's
week.
a friend to you and me.
Every week we pick out a big topic, we post about it on the Shack News Chatty, and then we talk about it in detail with your comments fueling the discussion, hence Chattycast. This week, our guest is the wizened wizard of arcane video magics, Andrew Zakowski.
Hello. That's a great title. Can I put that on my next business card?
I had to do an intro at one point that did not mention that you were dapper.
Oh, well, yes. I'm not dapper right now, so I guess
and I just ruined it
appropriate.
by mentioning it later.
Jokes are funnier when you explain them.
So our topic this week is user-generated content with Mario Maker sort of just around the corner, actually just 2 days away. We're going to talk about user-generated content in general as a trend in the industry. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about what we are playing currently. And Andrew, before Brian and I subject you to nerding out over Metal Gear Solid, how about you tell us what you have been playing lately?
Well, I've been playing. I just started playing the newest DLC for Dragon Age Inquisition, Trespasser. I'm literally like an hour in, and it's a post-game DLC, and because of Dragon Age and because of things, I don't play my game at the end of the game, just like right before. Because, I need some things still happening before, the game is over. So I had to beat the game over again, and now I'm into the DLC. And feels good, man. Feels good. It's like hanging out with old friends again. So I haven't gotten too deep into it, so I can't really comment on it quite yet. But I'm liking it so far.
What's the premise? Like, as somebody who hasn't really been following this,
okay.
What's the basic gist?
So, spoiler, you save the world. And 2 years goes by after the whole big bad goes away, and basically all the countries around you are like, you're kind of like a giant military force, and you don't have any governance on you. We don't like you anymore. We're gonna have to talk about disbanding you. And then
This sounds kind of familiar.
so you go to this big meeting place, and already. Without spoiling too much, you notice Kunari activity, which are a race of people whose nation is nowhere near where you are currently at. So a lot of questions start popping up, and that's pretty much where I am right now. So intrigue abound.
All right. Now, this is the second one, right?
This is the third story-based DLC. There was Descent, Jaws of Hakan, and then Trespasser, and then like 3 other multiplayer DLC things. But yeah.
So you said you haven't played enough of this one to really have like opinions.
Yes.
But how would you rank the other two against each other? Because I'm curious, like I want to get like a barometer of how where this one is coming from.
Okay.
From those two. Yeah.
Okay, so you know I don't shut the hell up about Dragon Age, so I hope that puts
we
me
just
as
invited
some
an hour of
credibility.
Dragon Age talk. We're not going to get to the actual topic.
The Jaws of Hakan DLC was basically, let's add a new area to the whole thing, so another like country to just play around in, which was cool. Was very interesting. The culture, they invented a new like type of people or a different tribe of humans basically, and that was very interesting. I really liked the Descent. That was the more recent DLC, because one of the biggest problems I had with Inquisition is that there wasn't really any dungeon crawling. It was just like a bunch of open spaces, and then you just kill stuff eventually, and then you win. And that whole DLC was just basically one long ass dungeon. So I right now, because Trespasser is supposed to answer a lot of questions about the story, I want to say Trespassers is probably going to be up here. then Descent, then Jaws of Hakan.
Now it sounds like
that's where
that sounds like wrap-uppiness. Is this,
it's a wrap up. It's the final DLC.
you're getting the
for,
sense that this is like them
Inquisition.
closing the book? Yeah. All
Yeah.
right.
So hopefully I'm satisfied with it, because I will admit I wasn't satisfied with.
What if
the
it just
ending of
ends with like a
Inquisition.
cliffhanger for Dragon Age 4, and you have to wait another like 10 years?
I'd start crying. I will start crying. You'll see me I'll probably stay up all night to try to beat this. You'll see me coming in Slack tomorrow. I'm like, Steve, it was horrible. I have to wait now. But, yeah.
Right. So is that pretty much the only thing that's occupying your game?
That is currently the only thing occupying my brain right now. Yes.
Yeah.
And Darkest Dungeon, but that's every day. So whatever.
Yeah, I think you have definitely brought
I'm
Darkest Dungeon
permanently
before.
it's just a constant state of playing that game, so it doesn't really count.
We all live in a darkest dungeon. I think that was like what Plato was talking about or something.
Yeah. Yeah, the shadows on the wall, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that
This is already the most literary gaming podcast you'll listen to all week.
Let's just keep it going. As I mentioned, Brian and I have been. I just know because I know what Brian is doing. I have cameras all over his house. We've been playing a lot.
Enjoy the show, buddy.
Put some pants on, for God's sake.
Never.
I know we've both been playing a lot of Metal Gear Solid 5. Last week we talked. It was our big topic, Metal Gear in general, and we talked a little bit about the opening. I think Rob and I had both played the tutorial, but this week we've both had a lot more chance to dive deep in it. To really get
long weekend.
Really get our hands dirty in Metal Gear. So I figure we can talk in a little more detail about it as a game instead of merely as a concept in the context of the full series. So Brian, tell me a little bit about how you feel. How do you feel about Metal Gear Solid 5?
Good. So like I want to be.
All right. Well, thank you for your report.
I want to be careful with what I say because I think that spoilers have been coming a little fast and loose with this game. A lot of the discussion, a lot of the debate and argument, and it's good discussion, it's good debates and arguments to have, but it's also kind of tipping the game's hand a little bit too much. So I want to be careful. I don't want to contribute to that. Is what I'm getting at. But I've really enjoyed it, and it's one of those games that I feel like when I'm not playing it, I'd like to be playing it. Like I'm sitting here and I'm talking about it, and I'm already thinking, I could go knock out this mission and this mission, and I could do all this stuff, and I want to be doing that. Like if we could just not do this,
yep,
and I could just go play Metal Gear, that'd probably be a good way to go.
That's kind of how I've been feeling. It's like these games don't come along all that often, but it's the kind of game where I'm thinking about it when I'm not playing it. I'm just like, oh man, I gotta get back to that. And my men need me. I gotta go check in on the base. I got missions to run. I got a dog to pet. I got shit to do.
A+ dog petting, by the way, in this game, just fantastic.
Yeah, press triangle to pet dog.
Yeah,
it's
good boy.
It's like press square to pay your respects, but less stupid.
Press triangle to good boy. That's
exactly.
That's what I need. That's what I want in a game.
So I think we're just sort of heaping praise on it and not exactly explaining why. So we should probably do that. I'm with you. I feel real good about it so far. I mean, I'm very early. I'm only on mission 12, and from
I have some issues with it.
1/5 of the way through, maybe.
Sure.
Not far.
It's a long game.
Yes. So far, it's hitting up in my this could be a game of the year contender. But the thing that makes it stand out for me is just how flexible everything is. There's a million ways to approach everything. It's very much Metal Gear Solid games sort of got this reputation, deservedly so, I should say, for being kind of these very gated experiences. My memory of Metal Gear Solid 4 was very you'd have kind of a straight path, and you have to get from point A to point B without being seen, and then there's another 45-minute cutscene, and then you do that again, and then there's another 45-minute cutscene. This is almost no cutscenes. It's the complete opposite of that, actually. It's almost no cutscenes and open world. So they're just hey, there's a base out here in the desert. Figure out where you want to approach it from, and figure it out. Just go do it.
Yep.
So that leaves a lot of flexibility, and the way that they have the tools arranged, there's a lot of combining the tools and the sort of clockwork machinations of how all the guards react to things and things like that. You can sort of count on certain things happening, but there's just enough randomness that you can't, exactly plan out how something's going to go. There's always going to be some amount of improvisation. So
this is a game where I did a midnight raid, guns blazing on a Soviet compound, while listening to "Take on Me."
Beautiful.
That's true. Yeah, you can collect.
Beautiful.
You can collect 80s tapes, and there's different things you can do with them. Of course, you can listen to it yourself. You can also have it play, like from your helicopter when you're like doing an airstrike on somebody. So, if you want to be
Ride of the Valkyries too,
you could
which
do
is
Ride of the
perfect.
Valkyries, or if you want to be funny, you could do Take on Me.
Yeah. Well, I also found that a man-eater goes along really, really well with blowing up tanks.
Yeah. It's just funny how these 80s nostalgic throwback moments create like unintentional comedy in that way. There's a lot of like weird comedy in this game. It's such a self-serious kind of series, and that's one of the chief criticisms about it. And the comedy elements have always been like, he pooped his pants, like like the most immature like types of humor.
It's like I said, it's the wisdom of a philosopher and the spirit of a 10-year-old.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's Metal Gear.
But there's different kinds of humor in this that aren't just like scatological humor. Like I think the way you phrased it when we were talking, pretty soon after it had come out, is like there is a certain amount of humor in just Fultoning things.
Yeah.
Because it's like you just walk up to a dude and you're like, I'm gonna strap a rocket balloon to your belt loop, and you're just going to go flying into the air.
And the fact that you can do that with anything just about makes it even better.
Yeah.
Like you want to Fulton the bear out of there? I did it.
Fulton the sheep.
The bear just goes woo. Yeah, the sheep.
Now I had always been knocking people out before Fultoning them, but the one time I did it to somebody who was still awake was particularly funny because you just heard like
yeah.
And then, of course, it alerts all the other guards, so you don't actually want to do that strategically, but it's still funny. And just recently, they've started shooting down the balloons, which is a pain in the ass. And you like
I didn't know they could do that. That's
bulletproof
like
Fultons.
that.
Yeah, they've started spotting the people and being like, shoot it down. So yeah. Anyway, the flexibility of the tools is the standout feature for me. I think that's what makes it so fun because it's not just like I gotta. Because I'll be honest, I don't know if I understand this era of Metal Gear very well. I never finished Metal Gear Solid 3 or Peace Walker, so I just kind of vaguely understand like, okay, this is Big Boss doing his Big Boss thing.
That's good enough.
So because of that, I don't particularly care that much about the story. The story is just kind of a thing that's happening as I'm running in between these really fun missions where there's usually some sort of wrinkle to it that you didn't see coming. There's always like the straightforward mission briefing type thing, at least for the story missions. They're like, you want to kill these 3 people or whatever, and you go in there kind of knowing what to expect. And then at some point they introduce a wrinkle during the mission that forces you to improvise in a fun way. And they pretty much do that for every story mission. There's always some sort of strange twist.
And I found that what's interesting is that the idea that the soldiers and their tactics evolve based on what you do. Like if you go for a lot of headshots, they'll start wearing helmets and that kind of thing. That's great. I've also found that it's also really easy to counter. For example, did you know that watchtowers do not have a natural defense against rocket launchers?
I did know that, but on accident.
Fact.
I had accidentally shot a rocket at the support struts of a tower. Yeah,
and that's a real quick way to take over an outpost. It's just full of fun stuff like that, and I love the fact that the missions are so bite-sized. It's taken some getting used to because it doesn't feel like a Metal Gear game in a lot of ways, but then you get those little flashes of like clever little gameplay systems or really weird humor, and you're like, oh yeah, this is totally a Metal Gear game.
Yeah, and I mean they're bite-sized if you do them right, but there have definitely been missions that I'm just like, motherfucker, and I'm just like trying it over and over again for like an hour because I keep dying at this one part. That definitely happens, especially in the story missions.
So yeah, it's good. I like it. I don't want to talk too much about like what I've done in the game so far because I don't want to like spoil it for anybody because I feel like this is a game that you want to go in knowing as little as possible in a lot of ways.
I mean, even beyond just story spoilers, to bounce off of that, even beyond just like these are the things that happen. Like there's gameplay spoilers. We sort of reference D-Dog. I feel like that's enough out there that's not super spoilery, and I don't feel bad about it. But little things like that when they happen, you're just like, oh, that's hilarious, or awesome, or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's
the
mission
instead of being told.
Yeah, like the mission where you find quiet. And quiet's a pretty known quantity at this point.
Yeah.
Is very clever in how it brings you into that mission.
Yes.
And I don't want to spoil that, but that was one of those things I'm like, okay.
They find a way to make it so that you do not expect it, and suddenly you're just in it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So that's really cool.
I have a quick question about Metal Gear Solid. As someone who's never played a Metal Gear Solid, never had a PlayStation, never had a chance.
Oh wow! All right.
How lost would I be if I jumped into Metal Gear Solid?
I feel like the story stuff. Like I said, there's not that much story stuff, but the story stuff would just like make no sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, it already doesn't make sense from what I saw on YouTube.
But you would get the
thing though, like
this is a guy who I think we can just say like the opening of it, he's been out for a while and he's coming back in and he's trying to build this base. Like this is Big Boss, he's trying to build this base. That's pretty much the gist of the story that you need to know. And everything else sort of like fills in around that detail.
Yeah, like you could walk into this game and play it and know about as much as somebody who's played every game, because. Like the story of Metal Gear is it's there, and you can enjoy it, but maybe you don't have to dig that hard. Like, just stuff happens, and you're just like, all right, just go with it. Like that's kind of my philosophy. And I've played all of these games. Like I know more or less what they're talking about, and sometimes I'm just like, oh, okay, that's so and so. All right, I know they're important, but I don't know why, so I'll just go along with it. Like
yeah, exactly.
That's kind of been my philosophy.
There have been characters they've introduced. I just kind of ran into one earlier today that I was like.
I vaguely remember this person being important.
I guess that's a person I kind of remember from Ground Zero.
Other games, right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So, as far as the mechanics, though, I feel like that you could just pick up very easily.
Oh yeah.
There are a lot of systems. I will say that there are a lot of interlocking systems, but they're not immediately apparent to anybody who has played the games before. So they're kind of teaching everybody together. People who have played the games before know the general mechanics of sneaking around, but I think anybody would know that because basically every stealth game has been sort of based on Metal Gear. But the whole open world thing and all of the little systems for building your base and things like that, they sort of have to explain that to everybody at the same time. So I don't think you'd be lost there at all. And I highly, highly recommend that you try it out, just because it's just a fun.
You are.
It is a fun ass
game of the year. I have to.
Well, that's why I picked it up. I wasn't planning on picking it up myself, but then I heard people, giving Game of the Year buzz. I was like, well, now I kind of have to, and I'm really glad I did. It's kind of hard. When I'm playing it, enjoying it, I'm like, I can't believe I almost didn't get this.
Yeah. The only story thing that I think, just knowing kind of who Big Boss is, I think adds a lot more weight to what's going on, and kind of knowing how that story eventually plays out, I think casts everything that happens in a certain light, and it's a very valuable light, and it really plays into the thematic nature of what you're doing. So I would recommend, like, if you haven't played the other Metal Gears, just kind of familiarize yourself with the lore, like on a very basic level.
I bet there's like
if you know who Big Boss is.
I bet there's a 20-minute YouTube video out there somewhere that's like, here's what's happening in Metal Gear.
This is the timeline.
Yeah, like just kind of gets the bullet points, explains the gist, and you're like, all right, now I got it.
Because while this is the last game, this isn't.
Somebody who makes video content should make that. That's what I'm.
You know what I mean?
I think it would be really convenient for people.
You know what I mean? But no, this is the last Metal Gear game. This isn't the last Metal Gear game in the chronological wise, right? This is like somewhere.
No. This is
it's in the middle.
The last one is 4.
Linking.
That's Snake Eater?
Chronologically it's 4.
No, Snake Eater is 3. Snake Eater comes
Okay,
before
well then
this.
I guessed and I failed.
I could be wrong, but I think Metal Gear Rising actually happens after 4.
Oh, okay. So Snake Eater
And
is
we absolutely
first, right?
count Metal Gear Rising.
It goes, okay, correct me if I'm wrong. It goes Snake Eater, Ground Zeroes, Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 1,
No, Metal Gear 1.
Metal Gear 1. Yeah, I forgot that the old Nintendo games were part of the timeline. But yeah, the old Nintendo games, and then Metal Gear Solid, and then Metal Gear Solid
2.
2, and then Metal Gear Solid 4, and then, yeah. That's the order,
Yeah,
Andrew.
basically.
Clear as
Wow,
mud.
okay.
Anyway.
Clearly.
Obviously. So we usually hit newsy bits a little later. I just want to bring this up because it's breaking and I want to gauge Brian's reaction. I just saw in the chat room for our sort of check news chat. Plague of Shadows, the Shovel Knight expansion, is coming September 17th. It's right around the corner. I am psyched.
Excited.
Nothing?
I'm dancing. Like
Oh.
I was too busy dancing to talk.
The man danced.
Yeah, the audio listeners can definitely tell.
Yeah. Just know that I was getting funky. I was boogieing down. I am excited. Shovel Knight is fantastic, and I can't wait to play more
One
of
of
that.
my favorite games of last year.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a long time coming, this DLC, but I'm super excited.
And the fact that it's free is so good. It's so
It's
cool.
great. It's the best, Jerry. Is the DLC also heralding the physical copies of the game, or are we still gonna have to wait for that?
Those I think aren't coming until next year.
Yeah. As far
That's
as I know.
heartbreaking.
They should come alongside, I think, the Amiibo and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay.
That's right. They made those sort of tied together in a way.
Yeah. But I don't.
So-
That's based on just kind of like a very quick surface read of stuff. I don't know. I could be wrong.
Yeah. But it's already out on like every digital platform that exists. So
True.
Speaking of collectible stuff, real quick, I did want to mention I played the original trilogy set for Disney Infinity a little bit. I just want to give you hot scoops because that's not technically out yet beyond the special edition, the Saga Edition bundle, and it's pretty good.
all right.
Like,
Dope.
if you like
Cool.
if you like the original trilogy of Star Wars, you should probably check it out.
You got very
there's a-
very simple explanations for the quality of things today. You're like, Metal Gear is good. And
It's good.
Star
It's
Wars
good.
it's
Good.
It's pretty good.
But no, it's I like it. They have like a lot of it's really good because it's kind of like a greatest hits of the original trilogy, and it's tied together in a way where like they kind of cheat and have Han and Chewie already kind of part of the rebellion and like fighting alongside Luke and Leia like right from the beginning because you have to have those figures in there. But other than that, like if you don't care about that, there's like lots of little funny winks and nods. Like for example, you get the coin to play as Boba Fett right above the Sarlacc pit.
That's pretty funny.
That there's like a mission where you're like trying to go around and race credits to get the Millennium Falcon out of impoundment, stuff like that. It's good. It's a lot of fun, and the flying bits are really cool.
Toy-based games. Wave of the future.
And it's all cute. It's all
It's
cute as a
here.
button.
Yeah. I love the style of those games. I think we've talked a lot actually on this podcast about just loving the visual style of those.
That drops on its own on the 29th of this month. So
Yeah.
if you have been waiting for that, that's also when like Han and Chewie and Darth Vader come out.
I think we will probably do like a separate review at Check News for that set specifically. Depending on how crazy things are in late September, I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move on to our big topic this week. Our big topic, as I mentioned, user-generated content, UGC, as the cool kids call it. This is how I pitched it to Chatty. Mario Maker is set to release later this week, or Super Mario Maker, as they called it afterwards. Ready to provide endless hours of inventor platforming design. While it has been lauded for its familiar toolset, it certainly isn't the first game to look towards users for longevity. Games like Little Big Planet, Disney Infinity, and even to an extent Minecraft have put the player base in charge of keeping the game fresh and exciting long term. So this week, we're examining user-generated content, not to be confused with mods. UGC is a unique partnership between the game designer and player, with tools designed with a very specific focus on making content creation a game in itself. What games have done it the best and worst? What's the mark of a great UGC system? What are the benefits and drawbacks of a more narrow toolset versus a very flexible one? And do we expect the trend to continue well into the future, or is it just a fad? Andrew, you were tapped for this podcast because you have played Mario Maker.
I have. I've
We
played.
two
I've
thirds
played a
of us
great
have
deal of
played the
it.
game that is serving as the centerpiece of the discussion. Um,
Here we
so
go again.
so anyway, Brian. Um, so yeah, Mario Maker has gotten a lot of attention, and it mainly is. I don't think it's too much to say. It mainly is about the user-generated levels. There are Nintendo ones. I mentioned in my review. Those are mostly kind of proof of concepts or showing people like, hey, here's a sort of fundamental design idea that you might benefit you to know about. That kind of
Mhm.
thing. They're not so much full-on Mario levels. So I think probably more so than a game like Little Big Planet, which did have its own kind of campaign. Mario Maker is all about the user-generated
Creation.
content, and
Right.
it's going to live and die by the quality of that. So, what are your impressions as somebody who played some of that already in the pre-release version and played what us dumb game reviewers were making? What were your impressions so far of the tool set and just how it stands up to other games in that genre, so to speak?
Well, I really like Mario Maker. Like you're talking Metal Gear is your game of the year. Mario Maker may be my game of the year, actually. I do enjoy the tool sets that the game gives you, and the fact that you use the gamepad. It's like finally we're using this gamepad correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy the fact that because it's still very user friendly and beginner friendly of creating things. So they it's annoying for me because I'm a dungeon master. I play I've been playing StarCraft and Warcraft, which I'll get to later, for years, so I know how to create stuff. And it's annoying that it's like, no, you can't use these items yet. You got to get good with blocks.
Yeah.
That's a little
Play 5
that's
minutes
a
of
little
the Zelda
annoying to me.
thing.
That's a little annoying to me, but it's like, okay, I get it. People shouldn't be overwhelmed because there is a lot that you can do with this. And I think the longevity is definitely with the user created content. Like there's some great content out there right now. Like if you go onto Mario Maker and you
Mhm.
search, like I mean we all talk about the Metroid Mario
Oh, it was so good.
because it's amazing and the
Sometime
man
before they
did
turn
a
off the
fantastic
servers, I
job.
need to actually get through that. I got so far in it, but I never got through it.
Hmm. But I think there's also a lot of longevity with just friends making content for each other,
Hmm.
because that's where it seems like it's going to start going. Like you and your friends are like, oh, I'm going to make this level. It's like, okay, well then I'm going to make this harder level for you. It's like, oh, I like that level. I'm just going to like work on that a little bit. So I think it's great that it gives people a chance to do that a lot more. Again, it compared to other user-generated content and game things like Minecraft, I think it does a little bit better with Minecraft because Minecraft is a little more constricting on what you can do. But I mean, Blizzard, all hail the king of user-generated content. Like you like League of Legends and Dota, you can thank Blizzard for that. Like that is a user-generated content made
Oh
game.
yeah, and I bet
So
Valve can thank Blizzard very much for Dota, considering they didn't bother changing the characters.
It's
right,
exactly the same, yeah.
it is. It's a
Bothers
little
the crap out
the
of me.
models are the same. It does. It does. Thank you. You're like one of the first people who has said that. I'm like every time because I don't play Dota and I see the models. I'm like that's the model.
That's
They're
Rexar.
doing the same animation and everything.
That's Sylvanas, yeah.
And then they're like, yeah,
That is
Like people
definitely
think
a
it's
Blizzard
new.
its own
Come
character.
on.
thing. It's not.
Now,
I
Brian,
I
wanna
roll
ask you-
Heroes of the Storm. That's me. That is my choice.
It always goes back to Heroes. I want to ask you a more philosophical, one of the more philosophical questions. Like, what's the mark of a great UGC system? Like, what are we looking for when we go to a game for that?
So I
Uh,
think because are you asking me or
I was asking Brian.
he
but
has
sure.
an answer already planned. Go for
Whoever
it.
can, yeah.
okay? So I think it's an interesting question to ask, largely because I mean let's not mince words. When you have user generated content, when you build a game around that, you're basically saying, all right, players, make the game for me.
Hmm. And especially in
That,
Mario
I mean,
Maker's case, where,
and that's not
like I
necessarily
said, it barely has a campaign. It's almost all.
right. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but that also really puts a lot of onus on the tool set and what you can let the player do and how willing you are to let them have that freedom.
Mhm.
I mean, it's hard for me to say kind of like in a blanket sense what makes those good. Let me kind of talk a little bit more in terms of how the different experiences that I've had with games like this have gone. Like I kind of see it as like a spectrum, right? Like let's talk about like Little Big Planet. I would say put Little Big Planet over on this end of the spectrum here if you're envisioning like just envision a line and it's on like the left. We'll put it on the left. On the left you've got a lot of power. You've got a lot of freedom and flexibility given to the player, but you don't have that great a game. Okay, like the game part of Little Big Planet has some problems. It's really floaty. The physics kind of suck. There's issues with it, right? On the other end, you have something like a Mario Maker, where you're a lot more limited in terms of what you can do. I mean, you can kind of play around a lot within this envelope or this sandbox, but you're still effectively making a Mario game. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You are making a game where you run to the right on some level, or maybe the game runs to the right for you, whatever. And you can play within that, but you're still making a Mario game. And you kind of have to decide what you want to be within that context. You want to give like this complete freedom or this like very wide, expansive freedom, or do you want to have it more narrowly focused, but maybe make it a better sort of quote-unquote game? And I don't think there's really been a game that's kind of hit that perfectly yet. I would say, like, not to keep coming back to this, I think Disney Infinity gets close, but even that kind of suffers until recently, like until this most recent edition, from on the game end of things, because their focus was really on just making this big toolbox where you can do whatever you want. So that to me is kind of and I will always lean toward I want it to be a better game. Okay, I want it to be something where I can sit down and play it, because I'm not much of a creator when it comes to this stuff. I'm not going to sit down and like endlessly play test stuff or fiddle with the toy box or whatever. I want to download what other people have done. I want to see what kind of creative stuff people are coming up with given this tools, given these limitations. What are you using it for? That's why stuff like Minecraft, Terraria, stuff like that's never really appealed to me. I want to have an experience. I want to actually kind of go through and do something rather than just sort of like be set loose in this world. So to me, like a good user-generated experience gives the player freedom, but makes that freedom really kind of constructed in a way where if you're not entirely bought into the user-generated end of it, you can still enjoy the product.
Yeah, and I mean, you sort of touched on a related question in the in the pitch here. What's the benefits and drawbacks of a narrow toolset versus a very flexible one? I think your Little Big Planet versus Mario Maker example is a really good one, because Little Big Planet is so open, so flexible.
Yeah, it's fantastic in that regard.
People made functioning calculators,
Oh wow!
but at the same time, it makes it very hard. It sort of makes designing a level in Little Big Planet. This is just how I felt about it when I was trying, because I would always at least give it a whack, Like it made designing a level feel like work. Like you really had to like think about it and plan it out, and it felt like you're a game designer with all the work that entails. Mario Maker, I've seen this mentioned in other reviews. Mario Maker, the tools feel like a game. It feels like you're sort of playing with this toolbox, and then you get to like just jump in and test it real quick, and then be like, oh no, that jump doesn't work, and then you go back out and move a block. It feels much more like play itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's partly because Mario is such a familiar game type that all of us just kind of instinctively know. Everyone who's been playing games knows Mario, and everyone just knows like, oh yeah, he's a dude that jumps and you move the blocks and blah blah blah. But at the same time, it's because the tool set is so constricted that it's like, yeah, it's basically like you can make a Mario level. We've very narrowly made it so you can make this one kind of thing, but you can make it in a billion different ways.
And I think it's interesting that it does that though, because I'm coming at this partially at least from an educational standpoint, because that's what I do, and I'm looking at this and looking at things like Mario Maker and stuff like that. And I'm trying to ascertain their usefulness in terms of like an educational. Here's how games are designed. Here's the sort of logic that goes into level creation. Some light programming, that kind of stuff. And that to me is fascinating, because I don't want to like. Is it okay to like promote something else that somebody's written on a different website?
Oh yeah, no. I was actually going to mention that as an example that might be what you're thinking of. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Jeremy Parrish over at US Gamer did some really good like analysis of his like first 9 or so days with Mario Maker, just like the different challenges he was coming up with, like how he gradually found himself getting better at level design by playing and testing and trying this stuff out. And it really speaks to this kind of like really sort of like subtle thing that happens beneath the scenes. Like we all play games, we all feel like we know how to make games well. Like we know it's like if we could do it, this is what we would
We
do.
are wrong.
But when you actually get the tools. Yeah, we were wrong. Exactly. There's like this whole other level to it because like if you think like something as simple as Super Mario Brothers World 1-1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every single part of that is like meticulously crafted to tell
that's
you
actually-
as the player.
Yep.
That's what I was going to mention.
What you're
is
supposed to
there
do.
there was a breakdown of that level that I saw. I don't even remember who did it, but it was
Extra
on
credits.
YouTube. Oh, extra credit. It was basically a breakdown of that level where it's like everything in this level is placed in such a way that like, oh, you are instructed without any instructions. You intuitively know like, oh, I need to get out of the way of this thing that's slowly coming towards you, but it's like a low pressure situation. There's no pits, like just the entire level. They just went down and broke down the whole thing of how it explains basically every fundamental of the game to you in the first, 1-1.
And I'm teaching a class on video games right now, and that's one of the discussions we had yesterday. Was this notion of how game design and like the notion of what developers expected the player has changed so much from the days of 1-1, right? Like all that stuff you would see now. I mean, we see like the the jokey memes and stuff from people who think they're funny but they're really not. But you see like the things like if we were playing it now, there would be a button saying press A to jump, press da da da, and a lot of that comes with the fact that it's a much more risk-averse industry now. You want to make sure people get in, play the content, get out. And so
it's almost like they
it's
took
interesting to
that
see all this
first 30
user-generated
seconds of
stuff
fun.
kind of. Yeah.
Almost like they took that first 30 seconds of fun lesson like a little too far and thought, oh crap, we need to make sure that no one ever has a bad time in the first 30 seconds.
Exactly, and it's almost interesting with this user-generated kind of movement that it's kind of flies in the face of that. Like, this is basically saying, here you go, here's some tutorials, but you're on your own. Have fun. Like, it's not guided, it's not hand-holding, and I think in a way, that's what I really like about games like this.
Yeah, and I mean, having played through some of these stages, of course there are the gimmicky ones where it's like, oh, this one's called Metroid, and then you sort of see like, oh, okay, they were trying to make this sort of multi-layered thing that you need to explore and visit one corner of the map and grab a thing and then go to another corner of the map. Like, that's cool. That's like a concept stage, But when it comes to stages that are just trying to be like straight up vanilla Mario platforming, those I found extremely hard to get right. There were, of all the levels I played, I think there were maybe like less than 5. I could count on one hand how many were just vanilla Mario platforming that were like really well done. And I made sure to like go out of my way and give them a star and a comment and say like, hey, this is really good. Because it was so rare that somebody would just understand like pacing and flow and variety, but not too much variety because you don't want to just throw a bunch of shit into your level, Like there's all these little elements that most people don't intuitively know, and I think Mario Maker, for me, illustrated and it is about to illustrate to the larger market like how hard that is and how rare a trait that is for people to really grasp,
And it's also, I think the cool thing about it, and we can kind of get back to the questions, I know we've gotten far afield, but the cool thing about it is that this is kind of teaching people the basics of things like aesthetic design, user interface, and programming. Like Disney Infinity has like actual coding in it. It's very simple, kind of like if-then things, but you can program if this button gets pressed, it will do this. And when
or like WarioWare DIY
had
the same
really interesting things.
The same kind of it was basically like
that was
logic.
A great game.
Yeah, it was a great game, but like it had the same kind of
fantastic.
feel of like logic scripts in a simple way. And Mario Maker doesn't really have logic scripts, or maybe it's more accurate to say
it does all that stuff beneath the surface. I feel
it does in a way that you don't expect, because you already know in your head how a Goomba acts, so you don't have to program a Goomba to sort of bounce back and forth between 2 blocks. He's just going to do that, and that is a logic set that you don't think of in those terms. But then you get into the notion of, okay, well, what if I put wings on a Goomba? Like, how does that affect his logic? Or what if I, make a piranha plant riding on top of the Goomba? Like, there's all these like weird little things that you can do where it's the logic types interacting with each other. That's where it really stands out for me, is when people make these combinations that they didn't really see coming. I think one of the only stages I published, I don't know if it's actually going to stay live when the servers go live or whatever, but one of the only stages I published personally, it was just me playing around with different combinations. I put a piranha plant on top of Bowser, and then I was like, well, I wonder if a thwomp can kill Bowser. And so,
right.
And so I sort of put this thwomp like sort of hanging precariously over his head, and then put wings on the thwomp so it could like fly around above him. And then when I got close enough to Bowser, the thwomp came down and killed him. And so I made that a stage and called it Deus Ex Machina, because I'm like, well, I'm not actually killing.
Clever.
I'm not actually killing Bowser. I'm sort of like making this other thing do it for me. But that was completely just me toying with the tools and finding this combination, being like, oh, that's how that works, and then making a statement.
Yeah. That's really cool.
It really encourages like discovery in that way, that I think is really cool. To your point, this is just a side tangent, but to your point from earlier, Andrew, about kind of being frustrated with the way the tools unlock, that was something I brought up in my review. And I do understand not wanting people to be overwhelmed, but I also kind of wish they had let you determine your order.
Unlock code. Yeah, just
like give you like, okay, you get
give me everything.
Yeah, you get 5 unlock keys per day, and you get to pick which parts you want. That way, if you have like a very specific idea in mind, like, oh, tomorrow I want to build this thing, then you know which part.
I want to build the castle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like that could be. I feel like that would be a lot, easier for people to digest than having to wait like the full 9 days to get the full set. Because there were parts in the final set that I was like, I don't really want to build anything because I want to have like the full suite before I know what I'm making here.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like those first 9 days, you're not so much building levels as you are.
It's a demo. It's kind of
you're trying things out and familiar. You're not ready to publish at that point unless you just sort of decide to make it a simpler tool set. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. To go back to the questions, which games have done it best and worst? It sounds like we all think Mario Maker did it really well. I think Little Big Planet, in a way, did it well. But it's just a very.
It was the first out the gate, and I think it deserves credit for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to take anything away from it in terms of what it lets you do and just how impressive an achievement it was. I just don't think it's that great a game. But as a creative suite, it's fantastic.
It's a little floaty and weird. I think they've made improvements. I thought the most recent one was probably the best, but also I think that one of the characters in there was the little dog, Sack Dog, whatever his name was.
Sure.
Was like the best character Little Big Planet's had so far, and I'm like, man, I just want every Little Big Planet game to just be starring this little guy, because it feels
Sack
better.
Dog.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very dog kind of day on the Chattycast. Anyway,
who's a good Chattycast? You're
like
a good
WarioWare
Chattycast.
DIY had a good system, but it was also, like we said, a more complex one that kind of involved simple scripting. There are ones that try to make it a little too simple. One of the ones that came up when I was sort of researching this and looking up examples was Infamous 2, which
sure, didn't know they had it.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone forgets they had it. When they try to make it a little too simple for people to grasp, it just becomes so constrained that it's just like, okay, well, every mission is I show up at a checkpoint and then there's 5 guys and then I kill them and then it's mission complete. That ends up becoming every mission because you constrain it so much so as to not overwhelm people.
Mm-hmm.
It's this really careful balancing act, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that's interesting, and I think part of why you're seeing this is because we live in what's called Lawrence Lessig, guy who used to write a lot about technology, is now running for president. It's a long story. But he wrote this book called Remix, talking about remix culture. And we're as we kind of do a lot more stuff with like YouTube, a lot more user-generated content on the internet, it's kind of natural that we move to games being this way, because in the remix culture, the idea is that the concepts, the ideas, the things we see in our culture, our media, are just there to be taken and rearranged and played with. I think, and I think that's a really fascinating, powerful thing, and I'm glad to see games kind of coming around to it and turning it into something that really steps a lot of these genres, these franchises forward. Because I think in a lot of cases that's the next step, is allowing players to remix their youth, their heritage, and create something new from it.
Yeah, I said it before. They need to make Zelda Maker.
Yes. Yes.
Let me make some Zelda levels. I will.
You guys
I'm
have fun
probably
with that one.
more into that than I even was Mario Maker. Just the appeal of designing a Zelda level just appeals to me more on some level. To read a couple
Punch Out
comments
Maker.
real quick.
That's what I want. I want Punch Out Maker.
Punch Out Maker. You get to design your own boxers.
Yeah, program the boxer, decide what it'll do. It's great.
Yeah, like how many seconds it gives between this kind of punch and
Yeah, put
I
that
like
on iPhone. I'd buy it.
Just do a whole thing. Metroid Maker. Do every Nintendo franchise.
Nintendo Maker. There we go.
Yes, in a far-flung future. Usual guest who is not here today, Ozzy Mejia, said he feels like the custom tools in Trials should have been huge, but it didn't really take off like I thought it would. That's sort of a thing that we see a lot in games that sort of jumped on the UGC thing. Some of them just like, brrr, like they just go nowhere, and nobody ever uses them, and it doesn't really attract the community, and for some reason, in some way. I think Mario Maker isn't going to have that problem because, like I said, it's based around that. Everyone knows that that's what they're getting into. They made even like the packaging, like they're telling people, hey, you're buying some tools. Like you're not buying a game here. You're buying some tools.
And I
so
think
a game like Trials, where it's got this super long campaign that is very challenging in and of itself, it kind of makes sense that people wouldn't necessarily look to that.
Yeah, and Nintendo is also doing the same. Like they're really kind of reaching out to the community and trying to kind of like tender like a relationship, almost like sort of like a curated idea of what this game can do and what people can do with it to get people thinking, get them engaged. And Disney Infinity does a similar thing with like they actually have like summits where they have like the top designers come by and like learn new tricks and stuff like that. And I think that's kind of essential to the longevity of stuff like this. That's what Minecraft is doing too, with their Minecraft conventions and that sort of thing.
Speaking of getting people engaged, I think that the way that they've been trying to show people like game ideas has been really clever. They haven't gone out and done tutorials or something like that, which I feel like would be your instinct when you're making a game like this. Instead, the levels that are included, I mentioned this earlier, but just to expand on that thought, the levels that are included in Mario Maker are basically showing people concepts. And I think one of the best examples of that is the Nintendo World Championship levels, which Andrew played some of at E3.
Oh my gosh.
Those are levels, and I actually have a piece upcoming on Shack News that's going to sort of talk about this. Those are good examples of making a challenging level that doesn't feel cheap, because the way they get around death, there are no checkpoints in Mario Maker. That's one of the things I think they need to add. But the way you get around death, they don't just have pits that you fall into most of the time. Instead, they have gates, and if you fail at a platforming section, you fall down to the bottom, and then there's a gate there, and you can just like go back up and try again. So it's like this really clever, inventive way of letting you try a specific point over and over again without checkpoints. That lets you make a really challenging stage without it just being like, oh, I didn't perfectly, pixel perfect jump off when the last pixel of Mario's foot was on that last platform, and so I died. So fuck you, game. That's that's how I feel like a lot of the user-generated content was so far. Playing the expert level stages in the review build, but I think when people get to those Nintendo World Championship stages and think about like, oh, there's other ways I can sort of make a challenge that'll feel fair but still really hard. I think that's a really smart idea of them. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to play those because that's what sold me on the game was the Nintendo World Championship stuff. I'm like, all right, you got me.
Yeah, those are brutal.
They're brutal, but they're so much fun.
They are great. They are great designs. The one random winner chimed in about Mario Maker. He said he thinks that might be the exception to the rule that UGCs are heavily under or poorly utilized. For one, it's Nintendo. That's just like a bullet point in and of itself. One, it's Nintendo. Two, Mario is an understood entity, particularly 2D Mario, and we've been playing his games for 30 years, and practically every gamer knows what they're supposed to feel like. So three, unlike most that bank primarily on their building aspect, this comes with 100+ levels designed by master makers themselves, so it's pretty much a regular Mario game spanning the ages of his 2D legacy, plus Grandma's first Kaizo I don't know what he was. Oh, I think he probably meant Mario.
Kaizo was like a freeware program that lets you make Mario levels, and like you could hack him into Super Mario World ROMs and stuff
See, I
like
was not
that.
familiar with that.
There you go.
So, yeah, he raises a good point. Like the shared language of Mario. This is something else I brought up in my review. The familiarity that every gamer has with Mario really counts for something.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because it's you know roughly what Mario can do, and you know what the experience is, and everybody's got that experience where it's like, oh, hey, this is what I liked about Mario, or this is what I didn't like about Mario. Now you can fix it.
Yeah,
or recreate
exactly. Now you can all try to make your improved versions of 1-1. Haha.
Yeah.
And I'll just we actually have to move on to newsy bits and things. This has been a longer show than usual already, actually. But I want to read one more comment from Freon. He said, "My sister loved Little Big Planet. She had hours making poop-themed levels, and she is older
Beautiful.
than me, married, professional position, LOL question mark."
Everybody loves poop.
Which
I got nothing to add. That's a great way to end
Poop's
it.
funny.
Yeah. He's got some people just need to unwind with making some poop-themed levels.
Sure.
Yeah. So, moving on, we're going to hit newsy bits, but first, a word from our sponsors. Brian.
That's all right. Audible.com is offering you, the listeners of the Shack News Chattycast, that's us, a free audiobook download as well as a free 30-day trial to check out their service. Lots of great books on games, technology, hundreds of other topics. You can choose from them. And every week, we're going to highlight one that we have personally enjoyed. I think you might too. This week, with all our Mario talk, why not learn about the history of that little guy and his parent company with Jeff Ryan's Super Mario, How Nintendo Conquered America. Narrated by Ray Porter, Super Mario covers everything from Nintendo's early arcade days to their battles with Sony and Microsoft to their reinvention with the Wii. It's a fun, breezy book, really breezy in some spots, actually. Probably the best one currently in print, covering Nintendo's often tumultuous history. David Sheff's Game Over is also great. It's not in print. There's not on Audible, but this is the next best thing. Jeff Ryan's Super Mario. You can listen to that or any of over 150,000 other titles with your free audiobook download. Just visit audibletrial.com/chattycast, audibletrial.com/chattycast, again, for those of you in the cheap seats.
Now, Brian, answer one question. This is minor spoilers for that book, but what era does it go up to? Do we hit the Iwata era? Do we hit the,
It goes well into the Iwata era, and it goes through the Wii. I don't think it gets to the Wii U, because I think that was coming out around the time that they published.
So it's like
it.
it covers up to fairly recent history.
The problem with Game Over is it really only went through like the early days of the Super Nintendo. So this is a lot further along. And
I am actually an Audible subscriber. I'm not just a spokesman. I'm also a subscriber. So I'll actually probably pick that one up.
It's a fun book. It's fun. It's worth reading. Like it's lighthearted. I enjoyed it, and I recommended it for those of you looking for a decent history of Nintendo.
So it is time for some newsy bits, quick one-shots on some news stories that came out this week. The big one, probably this week, just happened not that long before we recorded the show, actually. Apple just had its conference today. I don't think it was, it wasn't WWD, whatever. I don't know. It wasn't one of those things, but it was basically them showing off their new lineup. They showed a lot of tech things. I'm going to sort of try to briefly summarize some of the game-related things they showed. They showed a new iPad Pro, which you'll play your iPad games, with better fidelity and on a bigger screen. So that's cool.
Right.
Yep, there you go. More. I want one of those for Hearthstone. It'll be my dedicated Hearthstone machine.
Right.
They showed a new iPhone, kind of same deal. Faster processor for things like that. The sort of biggest game thing they showed, though, was the new Apple TV, which there was a lot of speculation about what they were going to do with games involving Apple TV. Everyone sort of agreed they were going to do something. Basically, the Apple TV pitch was, we have the App Store on Apple TV, so developers can make apps that are meant to be played on a television, and the TV remote that you use to control the Apple TV, you just kind of turn it sideways, and it's sort of a game controller. They didn't show a lot of the functionality of how exactly it works as a game controller, but they did show somebody using it to play Asphalt. So do we think that this is going to blow up the way that their mobile market did?
No. I think it's too little too late. Like, if they had jumped in on this a couple years earlier, we could be talking about them making a serious play for the living room. But I think that, because I always love the hyperbole, Apple's going to destroy Sony and Microsoft, and it's just not going to happen. You're going to get some games that people will want to play, but
I can't see them
It's
going
all
that far.
about
I can
developers.
see developers. I can see enough developers making something worthwhile that it's like, all right,
Sure.
well, if I already have an Apple TV, if that's
It'd be
your,
yeah.
there's a billion boxes
Yeah.
like there's the Boxy Box, Roku Box, blah 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 blah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Like there's a billion like that. But if Apple TV is your one of choice, I can see enough games out there being out there that it's like, okay, yeah, sure, I played those once in a while. I can't see it. The thing about phones is it's just with you all the time. And this is, my hot take because I haven't put that much thought into this yet. But I don't know if it's going to blow up quite as big, but I would like to see developers try to develop for it. I would like to see people do something cool
Yeah,
with it to
absolutely.
convince me.
More games are better than less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, like, this isn't really Apple's fault, but I was when they went into the Apple TV stuff, I was like, just give me an a la carte option for TV, and I will love you forever. I will buy one of those like immediately. But they didn't do that, and I keep seeing people not do that. So
We're
it's
years off from that even being
disappointing.
plausible. So
Yeah.
I
know.
You can't blame Apple.
It kills me. That's what I thought the Sony View was going to be, but then they kind of
Nope.
changed that too. It's
Yeah.
packages now. At any rate, our next newsy bit, the Destiny 2.0 update has released. The patch notes went up this week. It's apparently been very slow to download, so not everyone at the Shack News office has even gotten a chance to try it yet. But it's
Still
basically
downloading.
a lot. It is. They say it's still downloading to this day. A lot of the improvements that are sort of meant to assuage concerns about Destiny, it seems like it's in this patch, not so much in the Taken King, which is probably the smart way to go. So is this enough to tempt you back to Destiny, Brian?
A lot of the changes are good. There's so much going on games-wise right now that Destiny is pretty low on my radar, but I can't deny that I'm curious about, like, I enjoy the game enough where I'd kind of like to come back and play the new stuff. So,
Yeah.
I think, like, when we get closer to the holidays, price drops, that kind of stuff, I'll probably jump back in. It's just not a good time for me right now. I've got things to fold. I've got Mario's to make.
things. Yeah.
I got things to do.
Like you're explaining why you're not getting into a relationship.
Yeah, it's not you, Destiny. It's me.
I've just got a lot going on in my life.
Yeah, my job is really busy.
No, I actually really loved the Taken King, what I played of it at E3, and I wrote a piece that was basically like, this might get me back into Destiny. I'm sort of in the same camp with you where I'm like, yeah, now might not be the best time. I am kind of busy.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to try it, especially since it does sound like they're addressing a lot of the issues that I think a lot of us had. Destiny is one of those games that when you're playing it, it's so fun. Like, it feels so good. Like, they nailed the feel of it.
Yeah, it's
That
fantastic.
you're like, oh man, this is awesome. Why did I ever stop playing this? But then when you're not playing it, all of the things that you didn't like sort of like creep up and make you forget about how good it actually feels. So yeah, if they actually fix the things that I don't like and it still feels real good, then I'm totally on board. Andrew, did you ever play
All
any
for it.
Destiny? Are you on it?
Never played it. Played it. I got like 3 levels of Warlock for video content, and that's about as far as I got. And I'm kind of in the same boat. It looks cool. It'd be great. I'd love to play it with my friends. I ain't got time for that. I ain't got time for that kind of game
Yeah,
right
but
now.
Apparently, if you get Taken King, there is like an instant boost up to level 25, so you can start doing
that's good.
the Taken King content, which I would probably. I think my main character is like 24, so I'd probably just start a new character and just level that one up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll probably see about that as we get sort of in December when things are slowing down and there's not as much to play.
I will probably
assuming
go
I
for
haven't
that
finished
over-
Metal Gear or Witcher by then, which
Right.
it's entirely possible I will never finish either of those.
Dude, I don't even know if I'll ever finish The Witcher. I'm still on Bloody Baron. I can't. It's tough, man.
And speaking of The Witcher, our final newsy bit, the Wild Hunt Hearts of Stone DLC is coming in October. It's going to add even more content to a game that is arguably already too large. So,
It's in like 10 hours of extra content.
yes. So you want to play like an entire other box product worth of content in your expansion? Are any of us going to have any time for this? Because I think you have to be like
Where
fairly
do
high level
people find the time for this game?
I don't know.
God.
I don't understand. I would love to have the time. You know when you hear about somebody who reads all the time and you're like, where do you get time to read all these books?
Dude,
You know?
yeah.
They're not
like,
playing
what-
video games. That's
how I
where they get
feel
all the
about
time.
Well, I'm playing video games and I still can't beat The Witcher.
Yeah. It's.
I feel like I have to like
It's-
break my leg and just like
It's
hang
a lot
out
of
in my
content,
couch
yeah.
for like 2
It's
months
the
or
same
something.
problem. Yeah. It's the same problem I have with Fallout. It's like, great, 100 hours of content. No. I can't.
Although
But
this
I mean, I'd
question,
like to, but I can't.
to bring it back around to an earlier point, I had mentioned to our news chat, like, oh man, Metal Gear might be in my running for Game of the Year, and somebody said, like, so, Metal Gear or Witcher? And I feel like Chatty's answer is definitely going to be Witcher. But for me, it might be Metal Gear. I haven't finished either one, so I don't actually know my final answer on this. But Metal Gear has grabbed me a lot more, and I've been playing Witcher in fits and starts, and Metal Gear I can't imagine playing that way. I don't want to stop playing Metal Gear in the same way. Maybe there will come a point that I'm like, okay, I'm kind of sick of it.
Yep.
I guess I'll see. So we're getting towards the end here, which means it is time for Beat the Doc, the part of the show in which I abuse my hosting powers by pitting my friends against each other in a pointless game. As always, our guest will go first. Today's game is another stirring round of box quotes. I'm going to read it.
Okay.
From the back of a game box, you have to name what it is. There are 5 rounds with a tiebreaker because I finally figured out how scoring works. So, here we go. Andrew, you're up first.
Mm-hmm.
A kart racer for a new generation.
Oh my god.
I also like.
By
By the way, I'll give you a little
Sonic
extra time to think
Racers.
about it because I also like just like reading these with my like announcer voice. It's the fun. That's the fun of hosting this game for me. Reading the back of these things with like sounding like a bad '90s ad man. Anyway,
I stand by my answer. Sonic
what
Racers.
was your answer? I didn't hear it.
Sonic Racers, or whatever, the Sonic racing game that they did.
If you were right, I would count the fact that you got the title completely wrong. I would still count it, but no, that's not it. It is it is Mod Nation Racers. Mod
That's
Nation.
what I thought.
Remember that?
Oh, well,
the Little
there you
Big
go.
Planet sort of. It wasn't the Little Big Planet people, but Sony was obviously trying to jump on the popularity of that idea. So
I knew it wasn't Mario Kart. That's the only thing I had going for me on that. So
a little too obvious.
Guessed.
So Brian, here's one for you. Unleash your creativity in this Square game. Unleash your creativity in this Square game. Oh, I delight in torturing you.
Square game? I don't know.
Oh, are you just giving up? You're not even going to take a guess?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's Minecraft. Minecraft. Square game? Get it?
Bye, Brian.
I thought
Bye, Brian.
I thought that would throw him for a loop. I was pretty sure.
Back.
That was actually hard to find. That was the PC release of Minecraft. The Xbox One just didn't have any words on the back, but Minecraft. So, anyway.
Well, there you go.
All right, Andrew, you might win by default if Brian stays gone.
I can finally win.
The Beast has destroyed Empire City, and now it's headed here to New Moray. The Beast has destroyed Empire City, and now it's heading here to New Moray.
Moray.
I don't think Brian's
I know.
coming back.
He's done. He's out. Yanking his cords out. Familiar. I'm gonna guess some like City of Heroes expansion pack. Yes, I don't know.
No, it is Infamous 2. We actually mentioned it earlier. Sorry. Eventually Brian has to come back. So how are you doing? Hold on. I'm going to text him and
I'm
say,
sick,
come back,
but I'm
we
doing
still
pretty
love
well.
you. I'm going to have to cut all of this out from the audio.
Well,
One moment. Da-da-da-da-da-da. You might win by default. You might be like, well, that's the show. Ba-dum-bum-bum-ba-dum-ba. Ba-dum-bum-bum-ba-dum-bum-bum-bum.
Sorry, important phone call.
there you go.
Oh, I thought you were just so angry that you had to leave.
No, important phone call. Sorry.
All right. Andrew missed his as well. It was Infamous 2, so you're still tied at 0.
Okay. All right.
Here's yours. Superpower your imagination.
Oh, that's Disney Infinity 2.0.
No, it's not. I'm sorry.
No.
That was a good guess, though. That totally would have worked. That was Scribblenauts Unmasked.
Oh.
Oh.
The
Give me really hard ones.
Yeah. Finally, Andrew, you might be tied at 0, so we might go to the tiebreaker. Andrew, a papery world in your godlike hands.
Oh, come on.
A papery world in your godlike hands. I feel like Brian might know.
I want to say Paper Mario, but
No, it's not Paper Mario.
God-like hand.
Brian, do you know it?
I do,
Terraway?
and if I get it, oh, he got it.
It is Terraway, yes.
Yeah.
You are correct.
So I guess.
Oh.
So
I guess
Andrew
you win.
wins. I'll do the last one for funsies. The tiebreaker was going to be break into the next dimension. Break into the next dimension. Nope, nothing. That was Picross 3D, one of the best DS games ever. All of those games were games that were somehow related to user-generated content, if nobody caught that. Through line. At any rate, yeah, Picross 3D. They have apparently announced a Picross 3D 2 for Japan, and I'm very excited about that, but no word on whether it's coming here yet, which makes me sad. So that is the show.
Yay.
Congratulations to Andrew, who beat the
Thank
doc. Yeah. So thanks for listening. This is the last week we're actually going to have our Rainbow Six beta code contest up. We have codes to distribute for the Rainbow Six beta, which is going to be running later this month. I want a little time to make sure that I can distribute them properly, so this is the last week we're going to run it. So before we record next Wednesday, that's going to be the deadline, sometime before we record next Wednesday, go into iTunes, leave us a review. Nice or mean, we don't care. We'll cry a little bit if it's mean, but
we'll take
still,
it to heart.
Be honest with us. Don't be too afraid of making us cry. So yeah, we want your honest feedback. Go leave us a review, especially if it's a good one, but even if it's a bad one, and we will enter you to get a Rainbow Six beta code, and that is the Chattycast. So Andrew,
Yay!
as our video meister, do you have any particular video content you want to plug before we sign off here?
We have plenty of PAX content that is on our site right now. That should be for all those fun games. We have stuff about a new mobile game, Chronoblade, Divinity Original Sins 2, which I was completely smitten by when I was talking to the guy. Lovers in Dangerous Space Time, Runbow, Dreadnought, another fascinating game that I'm excited to.
I hear Runbow's real good. It got a really good review.
Runbow's real good.
On shacknews.com.
Real good.
Yeah.
Rumble real good. And I have a Darkest Dungeon interview because that was really fun to do. So I want more people to watch it. So yeah, watch my Darkest Dungeon interview. I get to geek out with the guys who made one of my favorite games.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, there you go. All right. So that is the show, and yeah, we will see you next week. So until then, I'm Steve Watts.
I'm Brian Carr.
And we will see you. And Andrew, we don't usually do that, but sure, feel free.
I want to say goodbye. And I'm Andrew
Zakowski. Interrupting your sign-up. And we will see you on chat.